Nearly 500 million people on the planet now have diabetes. As life begins to return to some semblance of normal, a new unspoken issue is rising. Researchers find that almost 500 million people globally have diabetes. The worst part is most don't even know they have it. Today we're going to look at some new studies that are emerging on this new epidemic, and I really shouldn't say new because this has been unfolding before us for the last 40 years. We're also going to look at what you can do not only to prevent diabetes, but if you have it or are pre-diabetic, what you can do to start reversing it and regain your health. So let's go. Welcome back to another episode. I'm Coach Eric. If this is your first time here, I'd like to welcome you and let you know that you've just found the best channel on YouTube for all your health and fitness information. I've also included timestamps down below so you can watch the portions you guys are the most interested in. To start out, why should you care about diabetes or finding out if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic? Well, firstly, it's a major health risk. In fact, people who are diabetic are more likely to develop other types of risks such as cardiovascular problems, nerve problems, etc. It's also a big issue because diabetes deals with insulin. And if you're a type 1 diabetic, you don't produce insulin. So you need to take exogenous sources or you're gonna die. If you're a type 2 diabetic, which is mainly what we're gonna be focusing on for the purposes of this video, you are resistant to insulin. Now, being insulin resistant is a major issue if your goal is to build muscle and lose fat. And the reason is primarily twofold. Insulin is the main hormone that gets energy into the cells. This is important because without insulin, you're gonna die. Since energy and nutrients can't enter the cell, it's also an issue if there's too much insulin being produced, which is the other end of the problem, because then there's too much energy being pushed into the cell. And this is what's gonna happen for people who are overweight or obese. Now, insulin is also responsible for growth. It has a direct anabolic action through something known as IGF or insulin-like growth factors. This is a critical hormone when it comes to building muscle tissue and also losing fat, as growth hormones have a very powerful effect on metabolizing fat tissue. Now, growth hormone can help reduce obesity through two enzymes which control fat metabolism. Now, these hormones are lipoprotein lipase and another one is called hormone-sensitive lipase. And pretty much these two hormones are just responsible for helping the body go through something known as lipolysis, which, as we discussed before, is pretty much the way that your body metabolizes fat cells for energy. It's also well known that overweight and obese individuals in general have very low levels of growth hormone, as well as other important sex hormones that control things like fat loss and muscle tone. So now that we know how important it is in terms of having our hormones in the right place, how do we identify if we're pre-diabetic or already diabetic? Well, to make things very simple, there's 3 easy ways for you guys to do this. The first thing that you can do is check your HbA1c levels. Now, this panel will test your hemoglobin A1c, which is pretty much the glycated form of your oxygen transporting protein inside your red blood cells. So that's what hemoglobin is. The A1c version just means you're testing the hemoglobin, which has a glucose attached to it. Now, when you're getting this test done, a level around 5.7 to 6.4 is what they would consider pre-diabetic. Anything above a 6.5% indicates diabetes, type 2 diabetes, I should say. Now, the only problem is these numbers are quite high, and depending on where you live or the hospital that you go to, this range can vary drastically. So just to be on the safe side, one thing that I would always say is you don't want to necessarily be within the average. You want to think about what is optimal. So what I would suggest for you is anything that is above 5.2% on your HbA1c, then you have somewhat of an issue. Okay, so being 5.2% and below is ideal. To give you a quick example, I've seen plenty of people who have their vitamin D3 levels checked, and let's say the range is somewhere between like 20 and 100, and they're like, oh, I'm 21. My doctor says I'm fine because I'm within the range. And it's like, sure, yeah, you're within the range, but you're on the lowest end of the range, right? So same thing is true when testing these levels. We want to think what's optimal, not necessarily just thinking about hanging on by a thread. Now, the next test you can do is called a glucose tolerance test, and as well as also checking insulin serum levels. Now, this test will pretty much show how much your insulin levels changed after consuming a sugary substance like, let's say, water with glucose in it. Now, a score that's lower than 4.0 usually indicates that you have insulin resistance, but work with your doctor and always ask what your numbers mean. Now, the last and easiest way for you to tell if you are insulin resistant is just to take a look in the mirror. If you're sitting 40 to 50 pounds overweight and have a gut and love handles that you can get a nice pinch on, chances are you're going to be experiencing some form of insulin resistance. While this test is nowhere near as accurate nor scientific as just getting your blood work done, it's safe to say that the test is the ultimate one to just get your shit together. You shouldn't fail this test even though you somehow managed to pass the first two. So I hope that makes sense, right? So if somehow you pass the first two, but you're, 50 pounds overweight, don't think, hey, I'm fine. Now, on a positive note, type 2 diabetes is completely preventable and reversible. Simply maintain a healthy body weight and body fat percentage is key to maintaining and managing healthy insulin levels. Living an active life and focusing on avoiding high calorie, low nutrient dense foods is also extremely important. So prioritizing high protein, prioritizing your veggies, and just whole foods in general is going to just take care of everything for you. If you're past the stage of prevention and need treatment, the best natural form of treatment comes from just losing fat. Everything you could possibly need to know about how to lose fat is already on my channel, so I highly suggest you guys check out the other videos and just take your time with it. Now, you might also be asking about medication. Now, many people who are diagnosed with diabetes will usually be prescribed something called metformin or a glucophage. Now, these medications are positioned to help the cells respond better to insulin. However, most research shows them to be highly ineffective outside of clinical testing. Now, what that means is just if you're taking metformin, it's not going to cure your diabetes if you continue to overeat and live a very unhealthy life. You're pretty much just fooling yourself. So any research that does show that metformin and stuff could be beneficial, it is because it's in a clinical lab setting where they're able to manage individuals' lifestyles. So it is helping the cells be more responsive to insulin in that sense. But the same thing is true with anything, right? You guys can't just be inactive, sit on the couch, not change your life while you're taking a fat burner thinking that that is now going to burn fat, right? All these things, whether it's medication or it's supplements that are effective with helping you be more insulin sensitive, they only work in conjunction with a healthy lifestyle. Just to clarify that, there's no better natural cure for diabetes and insulin resistance than just losing fat, eating healthier, and living a more active life. And if you would like to know more about some of my personal recommendations for reversing insulin resistance, I have a playlist here that you can watch after this video where I've put together some stuff just on the topic. It's a vast topic, so I've already done multiple videos on it and I'll continue to do multiple videos on it just because it is something that is a lot of people go through it. And if you don't solve this issue, this could technically be one big thing that's hindering your progress. So I would definitely suggest checking if you are experiencing some form of pre-diabetes or if you even are type 2 diabetic. Here are some final thoughts I want to leave you with. If you've been putting on weight at a rapid rate because of things like lockdowns and stuff, what are you going to do when the world opens back up, as it already is, and you are re-entering it in a more unhealthy way? Now, sure, most people may be vaccinated now, which is great, but they are sicker and fatter than ever before because they've been inactive by being stuck at home. Now, there's no shot or pill you can take to reverse bad habits and a life of reckless eating and inactivity. Now, fitness and nutrition will always stand at the pinnacle of health. Now, if you're unsure where to even begin when it comes to your own fat loss journey, I highly encourage you to check out my free 8-week kickstart right up here. And it's also important to start working on building better habits, which you can watch right there. All right, I'm Coach Eric. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.